For decades, the race between car makers was all about what happened on the track. It was measured in horsepower and torque. But today, the biggest, most important race is happening on a totally different field, and it's being measured in lines of code. So how in the world do we get here, and who's actually set up to win? Let's get into it. Just let that number sink in for a second. 100 million lines of code. I mean, that is way more complex than a modern fighter jet. It's more complex than the Large Hadron Collider. Your car, for all practical purposes, is now a supercomputer on wheels. And this massive scale of software is what's completely redefining the entire industry. And this really just nails the shift we're seeing. Of course, the feel of the leather, the shine of the chrome, that stuff still matters. But the real difference maker, the thing that truly defines your experience driving that car every single day, is the software. It's running everything from your maps and music to your safety features and, yeah, the huge promise of self-driving cars. So on this new battlefield, you've basically got two sides. On one hand, you have the absolute titans of the industry, right? The legacy OEMs, with a century of manufacturing power behind them. And on the other, you've got these nimble new entrants who think more like tech companies, and they are completely rewriting the rulebook. It's a classic showdown for sure.
Okay, so if this is a race, who's actually in the lead? Well, for all their history and power, the data is pretty clear. The traditional car makers seem to be stuck in the slow lane. And this isn't just a small problem. For some of them, it's becoming a real existential threat. Let's dig into why. The numbers here are just wow. A traditional car maker can take up to 50 months to get a new vehicle out the door. The new guys, the software-first companies, they're doing it in as little as 24 months. That is a 2-year head start, and in the tech world, 2 years is basically a lifetime.
And look, this isn't some abstract problem just for the industry. You feel this. This is why your car's infotainment screen might feel 5 years old the day you buy it. It's why you have to physically go to a dealer for a simple software fix, and why you're not getting cool new features beamed to your car overnight the way your phone does. So that brings us to the big question, right? What is going on here? Why is this gap so massive? It's not like these companies aren't trying or don't have the money. The answer is buried deep inside the very DNA of how they've worked for generations. All right, let's pop the hood and see if we can figure out what's going on with the engine. It turns out the slowdown isn't just one single thing. It's a combination of issues that have been building up for a long, long time. So what the research tells us is that this really comes down to 3 core problems. First, they're working off outdated blueprints. Second, there's a ton of process friction, which is really a culture problem. And finally, mismatched timelines, where the hardware and software development worlds are just completely out of sync. Let's break them down. First up, those outdated blueprints. So a new company might have just a few EV models, all built on one clean, unified software platform. But a legacy car maker, they're trying to juggle everything: gas cars, hybrids, EVs, sometimes with a portfolio that's 150 times more complex. Each one of those has its own software history, creating this tangled web that is incredibly hard to update. Then you've got this sync problem. Hardware, the actual metal, the physical car, is built on a really long, rigid timeline. It's kind of like building a house, right? You have to get the foundation perfect before you can even think about the walls. But software is built to be agile. It's fast, flexible, iterative. And when you try to force these two totally different worlds to work together, you just get massive delays and a whole lot of frustration. And finally, there's a huge cultural problem. I mean, you've got these hardware giants trying to act like Silicon Valley software startups, and it's an awkward fit. Teams are stuck in their own silos, organized around car parts instead of customer features, and that old, slow, methodical way of doing things just can't hang in the fast-paced world of software. Okay, so that's the diagnosis. And yeah, it sounds pretty serious, but it's not a death sentence. So let's flip over to the roadmap. How can these legacy giants get the tune-up they desperately need and actually get back in this race? So just look at where the effort goes today. See that tiny little slice for requirements and architecture? They're spending only about 15 to 20% of their time on the initial plan. And that's where all the problems start. Because when you rush the plan, you spend all your time later on endless fixes and rework. Now, this is where they need to get. By front-loading the whole process, spending way more time on the architecture up front, almost doubling it, they can slash the time they spend on messy integration later. It's that classic idea of measure twice, cut once, but for software. Bottom line, a better plan leads to way faster, more efficient development. So how do they actually do it? The strategy really comes down to a three-part tune-up. First, they need a modern game plan, and that means finally adopting agile methods from the tech world. Second, they've got to supercharge their technology, fully embracing things like the cloud and AI. And third, they need a next-gen pick crew, which is all about getting the right people and the right partners in the door early. Let's talk about a critical piece of that supercharged tech: over-the-air updates, or OTA. This is basically the magic that lets companies fix bugs, add new features, and constantly make your car better long after you've driven it home. This isn't some fancy add-on anymore. For a modern car, this is table stakes. Another huge piece of this puzzle is moving to a cloud-native architecture. It's how companies like Netflix and Amazon build everything. Think of it like building with Legos, instead of trying to carve something from a giant block of wood. It's faster, it's more resilient, and it's way, way easier to update or change a piece if you need to. It's about learning to build software like a true tech company. And of course, you can't talk about the future of anything without mentioning AI. And in this case, we're not just talking buzzwords. AI and machine learning are being used right now to automate coding, to make testing way smarter and faster, and they are the absolute foundation for those incredible driver assistance systems we're all starting to rely on. Now, all of those things can definitely help individual companies catch up. But the analysis points to one last idea that's, well, it's a total game changer. It could actually redefine the finish line for everybody. Just think about this for a second. Instead of every single car company reinventing the wheel, or in this case, the entire non-differentiating software that runs in the background, what if they all work together on it? It's a huge pivot away from a century of head-to-head competition toward a new collaborative way of thinking. And this isn't just some fantasy. It's actually starting to happen. We're seeing data sharing networks like Katina X expanding, real moves toward open source car software. And just recently, 11 major automotive companies signed an agreement to collaborate on this stuff. It's a huge sign that the industry knows that going it alone just might not work anymore. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question. In an industry that's been defined by brutal competition for over 100 years, could the real key to winning the software race be not to outrun your rivals, but to run right alongside them? What an incredible thought to end on.